Somewhere in the world right now, a baby is laughing. It can't speak, it can't walk, it barely understands what a face is, but it's laughing. Scientists have been trying to explain this for over 150 years. Why laughter arrives so early, why it shows up before words, before comprehension, before almost everything else. The answer tells you something about what laughter actually is. And it isn't what most people think. Most people assume laughter is a social skill, something you absorb from the people around you, the way you absorb language. You watch the adults in your life. You notice what they find funny. You learn when to laugh and how long and how hard. Gradually it becomes automatic. It becomes yours. It feels like it always was. That's a reasonable assumption. And it's wrong. If laughter were a learned behaviour, it should appear at roughly the same time as other learned behaviours. It doesn't. The average baby produces its first recognisable laugh somewhere between 3 and 4 months of age. It won't say its first word for another 6 to 8 months after that. It won't understand a simple instruction like, "Don't touch that," for months beyond that. The laugh doesn't arrive late, it arrives first. It shows up before comprehension, before communication, before almost everything we associate with a social creature developing normally. And that timing is not a coincidence. It is a clue. Here is the first thing scientists worked out. Laughter and language don't come from the same place in your brain. They don't come from the same era of your brain. Language lives in the cortex, the outer layer, the most recently evolved structure, the part that handles abstract thought and planning, and the ability to imagine things that haven't happened yet. Within the cortex, 2 regions carry most of the load. Broca's area in the left frontal lobe, identified by French surgeon Paul Broca in 1861, handles speech production. Wernicke's area in the left temporal lobe handles comprehension. These regions develop slowly. They need exposure to language. They need years of input before they work properly. A baby is not born with a working language system. It is born with the raw architecture for one, and then it spends the next several years building the rest. Laughter doesn't wait for any of that. When a baby laughs, the signal doesn't come from the cortex at all. It comes from the brainstem, one of the oldest and deepest structures in the entire nervous system. The brainstem controls the things that can't wait to be learned. Breathing, heart rate, swallowing. The reflexes that fire before your conscious mind has time to decide anything. And the involuntary vocalization we call laughter. Neurologist Martin Brown at the University of Zurich described this as the distinction between voluntary laughter and involuntary laughter, the kind you choose, the polite chuckle, the performance of amusement, and involuntary laughter, the kind that takes your body over before your brain decides anything. The voluntary kind involves the cortex. The involuntary kind doesn't. It comes from a structure that predates the cortex by hundreds of millions of years. It doesn't require language. It doesn't require humour. It doesn't require a developed understanding of anything. It was already installed. For a long time, the most popular theory was imitation. Newborns are remarkable mimics. Within hours of birth, they can mirror simple facial expressions. Stick your tongue out at a newborn and it will often stick out its own. It seemed logical that laughter would work the same way. Observe, copy, internalize. But there's a problem with that theory. Children who are born blind laugh. At the same age, with the same triggers, producing the same sound. They have never once seen another person laugh. They have never seen a smile. The behaviour appears anyway, on schedule, in the same developmental window as sighted children. Whatever produces laughter, it isn't observation. It didn't need a model, it came installed. But knowing where laughter lives in the brain and knowing that it doesn't require a model, that still doesn't explain why it's there at all. And this is where things get genuinely strange. Because to answer that, you have to leave the maternity ward entirely and go back about 10 million years. In the 1990s, a psychologist at the University of Maryland named Robert Provine decided to study laughter the way a biologist would study a mating call. He recorded it, he catalogued when it happened, between whom and in what context. Then he started looking at other species. Chimpanzees laugh, gorillas laugh, bonobos laugh, orangutans laugh. The sound is different. faster, breathy, more like a rapid panting than a ha. But when researchers measure what's happening in the brain during that sound, the neural signature is the same. In 2003, neuroscientist Jaak Panksepp at Bowling Green State University went further. He discovered that rats, when tickled in specific spots on their bodies, produce a high-frequency ultrasonic chirp at around 50 kilohertz, entirely outside the range of human hearing. Panksepp's team measured what was happening in the rats' brains during that chirp and found the same reward circuits that fire in humans when we laugh, the same pathways, the same architecture. And the rats weren't passive about it. They actively sought out tickling. They followed the researcher's hand around the cage, positioning themselves to be touched again. Every species that laughs does so in the same context. Physical play, roughhousing, tickling, contact between individuals who trust each other. Provine's conclusion was that laughter did not begin as a response to humour. It began as a signal, a vocalization that said, "This is safe. This is not a threat. Keep going." In a world where rough play and actual aggression looked nearly identical from the outside, that signal was essential. Without it, play collapses into fear. The laugh is what kept them separate. Your laugh is older than your species. It predates language by millions of years. The baby laughing before it can speak is not doing something early. It is doing something ancient. This explains something that has puzzled parents for as long as parents have existed. In 2021, Casper Addyman, a developmental psychologist at Goldsmiths, University of London, ran the largest study of infant laughter ever conducted. More than 1,000 parents across 40 countries logging in real time exactly what made their babies laugh. The answers were nearly identical everywhere. Peekaboo, tickling, being lifted into the air and caught, gentle roughhousing, funny faces, repetitive surprise. The same small shock delivered over and over, landing just as hard each time. I notice what isn't on that list. Wordplay, irony, timing, subverted expectations. Anything that requires holding two interpretations of a situation in your head at the same time, and recognizing that one of them is wrong in an amusing way. That kind of humor requires a theory of mind. It requires a developed prefrontal cortex. It requires knowing how the world is supposed to work so you can register when it doesn't. A 3-month-old has none of that. What a 3-month-old has is the oldest trigger in primate history. A trusted body making safe contact. Familiar surprise from a familiar face. The exact stimulus package that produced laughter in a chimpanzee 10 million years before a human being told the first joke. Charles Darwin noticed the connection between infant laughter and primate laughter long before modern neuroscience had the tools to measure it. In his 1872 book on emotional expression, he described the sound a chimpanzee makes when tickled: an open mouth, retracted corners, a rapid panting noise, and noted that the same description applied to a laughing baby. Same mouth, same trigger, same social context. He wrote that the similarity was not coincidental. It was evidence of shared ancestry. That was 1872. It took another century for neuroscience to confirm what he suspected. But Darwin was right. But Addyman found something else inside the data. Something that changes how you think about what that early laughter is actually doing. Babies don't just laugh when something happens. They laugh to make something keep happening. Watch a parent play peekaboo with a 4-month-old. The parent covers their face, the baby waits, the face reappears, the baby laughs, and then the parent does it again. The laughter wasn't just a reaction, it was a request. Again, more of that. Do it again. At 3 or 4 months old, a baby has almost no tools for shaping the world around it. It can't reach for something it wants. It can't point at something it needs. It can't form a single word. But it can laugh, and the laugh works. Every time. The caregiver responds. The interaction continues. The relationship deepens. Developmental psychologists call this serve and return, the back and forth exchange between infant and caregiver that builds the neural architecture of social connection. Laughter is one of the earliest and most powerful forms of serve and return a baby has access to. With no words, no pointing, no way to ask for anything directly, a 3-month-old is already managing a relationship. It is communicating. It is, in its own limited and ancient way, shaping the people around it. The importance of this becomes clear when you look at what happens without it. Studies of children raised in severely understimulated institutional settings, orphanages in the mid-20th century where caregivers had almost no time for individual play or interaction, found that laughter was among the first social behaviours to break down. Children who were never tickled, never roughhoused with, never had an adult face appear over them and make a silly sound, developed profound difficulties with emotional connection and social development that persisted into adulthood. Not because they weren't fed, not because they weren't physically safe, because the ancient signal had no one to complete the circuit with. Laughter isn't just a reaction to something. It requires someone. Here is the part that's easy to miss. When a baby laughs for the first time, at 3 months old, on a changing table during a game of peekaboo, it isn't doing something simple. It isn't just reacting to a stimulus. It is participating in one of the oldest social contracts in primate history. I am here. I trust you. This is safe. Keep going. That contract was written long before language existed to describe it, long before our ancestors walked upright, long before the species that would eventually become us was recognizable in the fossil record. The laugh was already there. And here is what that means for the laugh you produce as an adult. Not the polite kind, not the performance, the involuntary kind, the one that takes you over before you see it coming, the one you physically cannot stop even when you know it's completely the wrong moment, even when you are trying everything you have. That laugh is not a social skill you acquired. It is not a behavior you picked up from watching the people around you. It is the same signal your primate ancestors were sending to each other 10 million years ago in the middle of rough play. It came with the body. It arrived before your brain could speak. It has never needed permission. It has never needed language. It has never needed to understand a single thing about what was happening around it. When that laugh takes over, you are not being human. You are being something that existed long before the word human meant anything at all. We spend a lot of time on the things that separate us from every other animal. Language, reason, art, the ability to imagine a future that hasn't happened yet and work backwards to build it. Those things are ours. They matter, but laughter, the thing that shows up in the first months of a life before almost anything else we'd call distinctly human. Laughter we share with the apes, with the rats, with every social creature that has ever needed a way to say, in the middle of contact and closeness and play, this is not danger. Stay. The first time you ever laughed, you had no idea what was funny. You couldn't. Nobody does at the level where it actually happens. The understanding comes after. The laugh comes first. It always has.